Hey everyone, welcome to the AI show. I am Cassie Brevu. I am filling in for Seth today. And we don't have any special guests, but we're going to be working through an interesting problem, a common problem that a lot of people have while working with LLMs. So one of the big things that I think is cool about LLMs and AI in general is the ability to automate processes that used to be really hard. So like if you think about robotic process automation, which has been around for a long time, LLMs open a new world to start doing that. So we're going to look at some of that around help desk ticket classification. But before we jump into that, where is everyone coming from today? Put it in the chat. I'm coming to you from an abnormally warm Minnesota. It's going to hit like 40 degrees today in January in Minnesota. This is insane. And it's going to be warm all week. And that's kind of insane. We do not normally get this level of weather in Minnesota. Well, I don't see anyone saying anything in the chat yet. So let's kind of jump into a little bit more about what we're going to be building today. So as I was mentioning about robotic process automation and using LLMs, we're going to be looking, like I said, at help desk ticket classification. There was a story that we published for Siemens, and they had an interesting scenario where they had shop floor people like working in like a manufacturing facility that needed to report incidents that were happening, but they needed to be able to do it hands-free. So they needed to be able to do speech to text, and they wanted to use LLMs to summarize those features, or the issues. And then they wanted to be able to automatically log those through Teams and get those routed to a representative that could quickly respond and help them with their issue. So it was an interesting scenario for LLMs and for AI in general in manufacturing. So we're going to look at how we could start creating that. So I'm starting to think through the process of how do I go about doing that. And the interesting thing about help desk tickets, which actually doesn't sound interesting, but it can be, is that, every industry has help desk tickets and has needs to kind of automate these types of processes. And for me, it's actually how I got into AI. So my first model, the very first model that I ever built was to automate help desk tickets, classifying them and assigning them to a particular developer. So we had this process where we had to get tickets in from, it was at a law firm. We get tickets, assigned to the IT department, and we would have to then figure out which developer was the right one to solve that problem and then notify them. And so that was the first one that I did, was taking the different texts from those tickets, building a model, super simple classical machine learning model, using scikit-learn to classify who the ticket would go to, and then emailing them that the ticket was a fit there and that they needed to address it. So it automated something that was pretty simple, but kind of annoying. And I think that's what these LLMs should be used for, things that we don't really want to do and that we could automate more intelligently. So for this particular one, there is also a classification part of it, because we need to classify whether it's a design problem, an engineering problem, or a manufacturing problem. So there is a classification element. There is also a summarization element. Oh, there, I see someone. Hey, Amy, how's it going? Thanks for hanging out with us today. So the classification is part of it. So that's like one of the things we need to figure out how to do. We're going to try using LLMs for all of it as well, rather than building some sort of classical machine learning, classification where we'd have to get a bunch of data and label it and train it and then, continue to improve it. With LLMs, we're going to try to do that with prompting. Then the other thing we need to do is have a speech to text, right? Because they want to be able to keep their hands free. So we would need to look at using our speech to text service in order to take in the texts, or the speech that they're saying needs to support multiple languages, turn that into text, then send that to our LLM to summarize it and then classify it. So the first way I'm going to try to solve this is through just one prompt that does everything. And we're going to see how that does. And then I want to look into some of our other services and see about different ways. Because one of the things when you're starting to build these out, there's a lot of different ways to build solutions. and using LLMs or other types of other AI services that we have available, like text to speech. There's some summarization services that are still using LLMs on the back end, but maybe you're not going straight through. We're going to be using PromptFlow. So there's a lot of different things to kind of start thinking about when you start to architect these solutions and start to play around. And I think the best way to start figuring the best way to start doing this is to just start playing around. So that's what we're going to do. We are just going to play around and see how we can solve this scenario. So let me share my screen. There we go. And I'm actually going to start right in my terminal. So I've already created an empty folder that I'm going to be building my scenario in. So I'm just going to go to code, --insiders. And I'm going to open up a Visual Studios project. I'm going to add a folder, and we will call this tickets. What should we call it? Naming's the hardest part, right? Let's just call it ticket processing. And then from there, we're going to be using PromptFlow. So I've already installed the PromptFlow tooling here, which you can see. If you haven't installed PromptFlow, you would just go to the extensions and find your PromptFlow extension. And then here you can see that you could install it and use those cool features. And then it adds this where you can do different things. Now this is upset because I have not selected my Conda environment. So you can use VM or you can use VM or you could use Conda. I still prefer Conda probably because of my data science background. Cool. So we have an empty folder. And the next thing we need to do now is create a prompt flow within that. So because I already have the extension, I can just right click and say new flow in this directory. And I'm going to choose a chat flow with template. So it's still a chat scenario because the way that it's going to be implemented is going to be through a website. Honestly, the end result is going to be an endpoint, which you could integrate into any system that you want. Like I said, Siemens used a Teams app, a custom Teams app that they would use to then continue to communicate. You could integrate into any system. You can call an API from any system you can set that up with or call into. Also, you can also set up another app that takes a result and calls into. So it's really versatile to work with whatever system you're using or whatever scenario you're trying to solve, which is pretty cool. So when we get PromptFlow set up here, you can see that says, please install the SDK. Well, what I need to do actually is select my Python interpreter here, which I am going to do HLP-man, which is my HLP manufacturing environment. And then if we refresh, did I not install PromptFlow yet? We should probably install PromptFlow. Okay, so let me go to my Conda environment and install our requirements. I guess I created the environment, but I didn't actually install anything in it yet. So let's go here. Let's see, ticket processing. And now we want to pip install h-r where cool. Okay, so now we're getting our prompt flow installed so that we are actually able to start building with prompt flow because we need to have that tooling. So once that installs, then we can go back and select our Python interpreter environment, which will then allow us to go in and start building with prompt flow and VS Code. I wish I had some background music. Sorry about that. It's just silence. I really like some down-tempo background music when I'm coding, but I don't have any that I can use on streams right now. So got to get that set up. All right. So once this is installed, let me move it over here. We will go back to our select Python interpreter. It's still installing. It's still installing. I forgot that I hadn't set it up for PromptFlow. I set up my new environment for starting to build out this project, and then I didn't do anything else with it yet. So, but we can take a look at while that installs the different things that are set up. So you saw that I used some of the templates that are available in PromptFlow that you can just go start doing really quickly, get started really easily without having to think about it. These are to set up different connections, which I've already done. So let me get rid of those because I actually do not want those because I've already set up some connections over here. So if I go over to PromptFlow connections, oh, it still needs that for the connections. Okay. Maybe we'll just use one of my other environments that I've already set up. Let's do that because it's taken a minute. Now, if we go here, you can see that it sees that it's installed, and then we can go in and take a look. So I'll just use a different environment for now. One of the things here we need to do is set up our connections. There we go. Now my connection's loaded in. So I already set up this Azure OpenAI connection that I've already created in Azure by creating an AI studio and then creating a service and connecting that in PromptFlow here. And then it's asking if I want to do chatter completion. It's looking at the different models that I have deployed. I want to use 3.5 Turbo and then setting the different properties for that. So if we just used this out of the box, like super simple, I haven't done anything other than set my connection, you can start running and playing with this. I didn't put an input string here though, so might prompt me. Probably should have done the, yeah, see, look, there's no question. So let's say, what is the meaning of life? Because that's my favorite thing to ask. It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Although it won't answer with 42 unless you say in the movie or in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or book, I should say. Okay, cool. So we actually have a working model really, really quick, really simply with not much work, but we want to change things around because our task is different, right? So here it's just saying you're a helpful AI assistant, and our task is going to be a bit different than that. So our task is going to be this. Rather than typing it out, oops, let me just copy this in. And then we want to word wrap this so we can actually read it. There we go. Okay, so our task is different. You are an AI agent for HLP manufacturing. They manufacture car batteries. So that's our fictitious company that we're using in this scenario. And then as an agent, your job is to summarize the issue reported by the field or shop workers. So we're just telling it you need to summarize. And then we're going to, what does it say? The issue will be reporting a long form text. So basically the people are going to have some sort of activation word. Then they're going to say, probably a lot of things about what the issue is and what's happening. And then its job is to summarize that and classify which department it should be sent to. And we're telling it the three options are design, engineering, and manufacturing. So this is super simple, super basic way of solving this problem. But let's take a look at how it does with this. Now, I don't have good sample data yet. So I have like a really basic text to give it. And it's actually a task I still need to do is to generate data around what types of issues are happening on manufacturing floors, because I've never worked in manufacturing, so I'm not super versed on that topic. So I definitely need to leverage some subject matter experts. So for example, if you were building this, for your company, you would want to look for that data set or work with subject matter experts to get that data to start to understand and be able to test these, because we also need to test them thoroughly. So now I've updated the file, and I want to say I would like to report an issue in the manufacturing line. It seems, what did I put here? It seems that you know what? I think there's a way to look at this multi-line. There we go. That is better. Let's fix some of this spacing. So here's just a really simple, I would like to report an issue in the manufacturing line. It seems the batteries are misshaped and they will be invalid. Obviously, I'm like, what could be wrong with a battery? It's shaped wrong. There's probably a lot that could be wrong with a battery, but we were able to correct the issue manually, but there's something wrong with the system. So if I run this with our new prompt, let's see what I get. Now, what are other issues with batteries? They're dead, I guess. But I would think in a manufacturing line, maybe that'd be like one of the tests that they are doing. Yeah, I don't know. I guess like what kind of problems I would guess that, you know, things are coming out incorrectly. Batteries aren't charged correctly. I have no idea. Literally no idea. Does anybody have any ideas on what we should ask it to test it? Because I really need some subject matter expert here. Okay, so if we see this, it says the manufacturing line is producing misshapen batteries, which renders them invalid. Manual correction is possible if there appears to be a system issue. So classification, manufacturing. That's pretty decent. I mean, I didn't give it a very hard question. And honestly, evaluating these is so important to start understanding how they're performing. So the next thing I would really need to do to see if this would be good enough would probably be to start, like I said, creating a JSON-L file and start giving it different sample data pieces and then starting to do different evaluations to see how it performed. But I don't have that data yet, so we can't do that yet. So I want to look at some other ways that we could solve this problem and think about and weighing those different scenarios. So which one would be better for what scenario? Okay. So this was, like I said, super basic. We built it in what, like 15 minutes, like not even. And for some scenarios, this might be good enough. Like sometimes it's literally all you need is a prompt. A lot of time you need to do more than that. You might want to do RAG. So you might want to have, retrieval augmented generation is what RAG stands for. And you might want to add in your own data to better answer questions and provide things like, I think it'd be kind of neat to do summarization and then have it connected to like a knowledge base and then possibly be able to answer it automatically with like common issues that have maybe already been solved. So like that would be a neat way to add in some more features into this and make it better. So when do you actually need to send that out to an actual person? And when is it something that's kind of a frequently asked question? That could be another way. So that would be a way you'd want to add in your own data. You would summarize it, classify it, and then have a lookup to see if there was something similar in the solution. And so with this one, you would then have some sort of chat interface and they would prompt them with this scenario. So prompt them with this summary saying, you know, is this correct? And they can just say yes, send it off. And then they could still send it off and even return some of those FAQ things like, have you tried these things? Maybe you're able to resolve it yourself and then have that kind of quick resolution. So there's a lot of different ways you could start updating this and adding more. Another thing, though, that when we start testing, sometimes you find is that you need to split it out into smaller tasks. Sometimes, like, for example, my classification and my directive of summarization, maybe should be separate things. And I think that can actually improve a lot of your results, too. So if we look at, I'm going to show you a slide quick here, or a couple slides that I have. So this is one that we use at Ignite, and I really, really like it because when you start to think about solving these types of problems, you kind of follow a standard process overall, just like your software development lifecycle. You have your, MLOps and lifecycle and how you go through the different processes. So first is ideating and exploring. So that's kind of what we're in right now, or it is what we're in right now, where we need to connect our data or look at data. We built a basic prompt and we kind of tested it really simply, obviously not enough to ever be like, yep, it's good, ship it. We need to do a lot more than what we've done so far. But we're kind of in that space right now where we're ideating, how would I solve this? What services should I use? Testing out a basic prompt. You can test out prompts super quickly, then start connecting in your data and things like that. Once you think you have a good enough scenario, so we're going to stay in the ideating and exploring today because we have a lot more work to do before we're ready to start testing it and evaluating it. Once you think you have that, then you go into your building and augmenting and you start to look at different evaluation flows. So we can actually use prompt flows to evaluate our prompt flows using GPT-4, which is pretty cool. This actually really blew my mind the first time I saw it. Let's see if I have a slide here. So when we start to look at how we're going to evaluate these, like I said, we need to have a JSON-L file, which is just going to have different data points that we're going to be adding in. And then from there, you run it against your prompt flow. So we'd run it against this very basic prompt flow that we have, and we'd get an output result. We'd take those results and then we'd send them into GPT-4, and GPT-4's prompt will be your job is to evaluate these and giving it the different parameters of what we want it to evaluate and saying, score between 1 and 5. So then based on the output of 3.5 Turbo, we use the output of 4 to test whether it's performing correctly. So that's what we would need to do once we get to the point where we actually have something to test. The other thing that I think is interesting about this scenario is right now, we just have something that's kind of like this. So we have a question coming in. We're not even actually doing any of the RAG part. So we're literally just going into the OpenAI model and we're getting an answer. So like this is the most basic way that you could build an LLM solution and then getting a result. Once we start adding our own data, that's where we're going to have this customer lookup. So for this one, I would probably want to also have a database of users so I could get the logged in user information and provide that in the ticket. So we would want to add in a Cosmos lookup in order to look up that customer information and then add that in so that we could add personalized responses. So we'll definitely have to be adding more of that type stuff in. One of the other thing I think I might find when I start testing, but I won't know until we start testing it and I have that sample data, is that we might want to break out the intent classification and then break that out to a separate task. So we'd have just one that is going to classify whether it was engineering, design, or manufacturing issues. And then from there, then have a summarization LLM call and then process the ticket. So how much you want to break them out is kind of another thing that you start thinking about as you're building them. And you really only want to break them out as much as you need to get a good result. So if you started testing this and you were getting a good result without much additional work or creating additional prompt flows or breaking out intent or breaking out all these different things, then you wouldn't need to do it. So, but there are scenarios where you'll find that you will see a huge improvement by starting to break down the task into smaller pieces and then solving for those individual tasks. But so far for this one, we haven't seen that. The other thing that when I was looking at solving this scenario to start thinking about is, where'd my browser go? There it is. I was looking at this blog, which has showed some updates to exactly what we're looking at, task optimized summarization. And when I was looking into this article, so this was after I kind of was going straight into the LLM, our text services are also starting to be backed by LLM solutions. So previously, before, if you'd use our services and used cognitive services, you would have looked at, AI services is what they're called now, formerly known as cognitive services. You would have looked at like the different ones and you would have different text solutions and different computer vision and things like that. And so now we can go straight to LLMs and do everything there, but they are still updating, or there is still work being done, as I found with this, around using a text AI service specifically. So I started looking into that and started seeing some interesting scenarios. So right now, this is the summarization service. So it's an AI service specifically for summarization. And it's backed by LLMs. It's has some different region support. So that's the other thing when using our LLMs and using different services, you need to look at what regions are supported for the model and scenario. So it looks like this one we just want conversation summarization. So we have quite a few regions. If we wanted custom summarization, it looks like that's only East US. So if we go back to the summarization overview and we start looking through, we have document summarization, conversation summarization, and then there's also custom. And so when you need custom is if you have to add additional, like if you try out, I would first try out just the out of the box ones and see if you get enough results. If you're finding that mistakes or, when you're running your evaluations, that some of the different scenarios aren't performing as well, it could be that you need to add some of your custom data and information into the summarization in order to get better results. So I would say go there only if you need to, right? And as you're trying out your different solutions and iterating and trying different ways of solving that solution or solving that problem, you'll start to probably see which ones are going to work best. So this document, in fact, I should put this in the chat so you guys can take a look, because I found this super interesting. Again, if my LLM, after I put data on it, if it was like a large amount and it worked well, I probably would just stick with that. But if, let's say, there we go, I put this document in the chat, but I'm definitely going to try this out too, just out of curiosity, to see how it performs out of just an out-of-the-box LLM with my prompting changes versus going into this text analytics service and using a summarization. The other thing is that still this is specific summarization. I don't think there's classification on this. So the classification would then for sure have to be separated out into a separate task, which in my opinion, I'm probably going to get a lot better results with that anyways. I haven't tested it for this scenario, but in other scenarios that I found, breaking classification out and breaking the tasks into smaller pieces helps a lot. So I feel like we would want, so let's see, what are these two? There's extractive, produces a summary by extracting sentences within the document, or abstractive, generates a summary that may not use the same words as those documents, but captures the main idea. Interesting. I'm not really sure which one of those we would want for this. So a summary that does not use the same words as those in the documents. See, the same words might be important because there might be specific jargon that needs to be included. So I feel like that might not be the one, but we want extractive because we want to extract sentences and convey the main ideas. So that definitely seems more like what we would want if we were going to use this service. And then there's document or conversation. I feel like we're going to want conversation because we are going to be using it in like a chat scenario where they're going to be giving their information. We're not going to be providing large documents of text. So conversation would make sense for the scenario. Let's take a look at this. And the other service, which I have not set up yet either, we haven't talked about, is obviously the text. Speech to text is a separate service that we'd have to do as our first step in order to use the LLM. So we need to first extract that data to get it ready to then be sent to the summarization and classification services. So let's see here. So this is saying it's only in Sweden's central region. I'm wondering if that needs to be updated because when I looked at the region support, it said it had more regions. It said we could use East US. So that might need to be updated. So we create a language resource in Portal. Let's do that now. And then from there, so we want to answer your questions. That's cool. But no, we want to use text classification, custom identity recognition, summarization. Yeah, we want this one. And then let's create our resource. And then the other resource I want to create right now too is our text to speech service, or speech to text. I'm going to use East US because I think it's there. Let's call this HLP. Text service. I think we'll be good with that level. Okay, then I have an existing storage account that I want to use. And then we acknowledge that we will use AI responsibly. That is correct. All right, let's go ahead and create this service. And the other service I want to create is our text-to-speech. I already have an AI Studio service, so I don't need to create that one. And then I also want a speech-to-text Azure service. Let's see here. Audio-to-text translation. Now, I know that if I go into AI Studio, go to Explore, there is a catalog of different AI models. So depending on how you want to do this, if you want to use one of the pre-built AI services, or maybe you want to use an open source model and deploy it in AI Studio as an endpoint and then use that. There, you could also do that. I know Whisper from Hugging Face. I believe Hugging Face made that one, right? Let's see, where is it? Where is the Whisper model? That is a popular open source. Oh, OpenAI. Okay. Duh, OpenAI made the Whisper model. So we could go in here and take a look at this. This is a transcription pre-trained one. And we could deploy this one and use that. Oh, neat. It has some services. I wonder if I should use this. Let's try. I don't know if I have quota, but we're gonna find out. We're gonna make a new endpoint. We're gonna call this HLP Whisper type. All right, let's let that think, and then let's go over to this one. I actually have a cool demo where I use Whisper locally. So I have Whisper Tiny, which you can run in your web browser locally on the machine, which is super sweet. So like when you're thinking about manufacturing, if connectivity was an issue in that maybe they don't have a strong connection to the internet, or for whatever reason they need to be able to do processing locally, you could also look at deploying small ML models and using something like Onyx Runtime and inferencing in the web to get that result too. Okay. So this is kind of my process, how when I go through these things, I know I'm giving you like a lot of information, a lot of different ways to do it. I kind of go around and I know all the different ways I could do it, think about the scenario that I need to solve, the different services that are out there, and then I just start playing with stuff until I see what works best. And that is my process. Okay. Where is my resources? AI speech. Where try service to text free. Let's try that. All right, well, let's go to resources, create a resource, AI services. This is a speech service. Although I think I think it would be in the AI service as well. Let's see, so this has vision, language, and speech AI service. Quickly see here. Which one do we want? Has anyone started building with us, or anyone else done product or robotic process information or automation, I should say? I'd be curious what solutions people are doing. I feel like every day now I see like a new article about a company that has started to leverage these services to do really cool automation things. So this brought me to AI services. So maybe that is what I want to deploy now. Audio to text translation. What's the quick start say? Let's take a look here. Create a speech resource. What is this? Was this updated recently? Let's check. Ooh, this might be. Let's see. So this brought us to speech services. So this is to transcribe text. Yeah, let's try this one. Okay, HLP manufacturing. Name, we'll call this copy speech to the standard here. We're in the right resource group, and that's great. Okay, cool. So while that creates, let's see. Okay, so we deployed Whisper in OpenAI Studio. It is still provisioning, but that's another endpoint that we could set up to use. And let's see. The other thing that was cool with the Whisper model that I was looking at when I was playing with it for different scenarios is you could have Whisper Tiny locally, and obviously Tiny is going to be slightly less, accurate and robust as a large, and I think there's less language supported. I'd have to double check that though. But it's cool because you could have like a failover kind of scenario where you do the translation locally in your browser using Whisper Tiny, or in an application. Maybe you have a client application versus a browser, but the transcription, you could have like a kind of check to see how good it is and then offload it to large. Another interesting way to start to use Whisper for different text-to-speech scenarios is that you can have it get a response quicker locally. So have Tiny run locally, but at the same time have a parallel request to large, Whisper Large running in the cloud, and then update the transcription asynchronously when you get it back from the more accurate model. And so you can create a really good user experience. You get really fast results, and then have it kind of fix itself with the larger model running in the cloud. So lots of cool ways that you can look at using and deploying Whisper for speech to text scenarios. No, I don't think I saw. Did I see Whisper Tiny in? Let's see here. Explore catalogs. I thought I only saw Whisper Large, and I guess maybe that makes sense because I think Whisper Tiny is more meant to be run locally. Yeah. Let's see, Azure OpenAI large language models. Let's see where it was Whisper model. That's just funny. Yeah, and then so you can see the kind of model comparison here for Tiny versus large V2. Looks like we have multilingual through all of them. So that's good because one of the requirements for this is to do a multilingual solution. Let's go back to, okay, let's go to resource. Okay. Speech Studio. Look. Oh, cool. So they have Whisper model in Azure OpenAI service. Oh, so we can like actually just try it out really quick too. That's neat. So Speech Studio has Whisper as well. That's very good to know. And so they're using Whisper V2 large. We deployed large, I think, didn't we? Over here. Yeah. So this one's going to have a little bit more accuracy. Oh, where did it go? So many tabs open. All right. So my OpenAI service does not, oh, it's this one. Oh, I don't have it deployed. I need to deploy it in my OpenAI service. Let's see if I have resources or quota for that. So you can see there's a lot of exploring when you start to build with AI models and for AI solutions, for starting to try different things. So let's see if I want to deploy. Do not see it there. What do we have here? Models. Yeah, I do not see where I can deploy those right now. Create a custom model. What's that do? I think that's for fine tuning. I don't think that's what I want. Yeah, I do not see, although I guess we technically were able to deploy it here, so maybe that's what this will look at. So I have my Azure OpenAI service here. Oh, I wonder if it's a region. I wonder if I'm in the right region. That could be the issue. Whisper might not be available in that region. Okay, let's go back. And let's take a look at the speech to text service. So this is to try them out. It's text to speech. We want speech to text. Let's take a look at this one. I don't have an audio file to try this out, but let's look at the sample code. Did this model deploy it? Still deploying here. Okay. So I think this might be an older way of doing it. I don't think we necessarily want to do it this way. Not that you couldn't. I'm sure it'll work just fine. But I like playing with the new stuff. Let's see. Recognize speech from a microphone from Python using the speech service. I want to take a look at what's in this sample. Let's see what they're doing here. That is not what I wanted. Oh, it's right here. All right. So this would be using the speech SDK for the speech to text service. Looks like we just set up our keys. That looks pretty standard. And then let's see, what do we do here? Create instance of speech, create a recognizer with the given settings. And then start. Turns a single utterance is recognized. The end of the single utterance is determined by listening for silence or the end using a maximum of 15 seconds. So this is interesting because we don't really know how long they're going to be speaking for. I feel like I would just record for as long as they're speaking and then send it up to be transcribed rather than doing, because you can do real time with these as well, where you're like batching that in and you're getting the response. I believe there is time, like there's a certain amount of time you can send per request. At least with Whisper there was. I don't know with this speech to text service what the limitations are there, but you may have to chunk it out either way, even if you recorded the whole thing and then wanted to send it up to the service. My model, nope, still deploying over here. Let's see. I wonder what other speech, although I think like Whisper is pretty much what you want to use now. Yeah, I mean, Whisper's what we're going to want to use, I think. Just based on my experience with it, it was a really good model to use. And then for Whisper, let's see, I think that was the one that I know has some, totally lost my OpenAI Whisper tab. Where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, let me paste this in too, because I like this blog that we were looking at around this scenario. So I sent that in the chat as well. Don't need the prompt flow. I think I must have closed it because I do not see the, all right, let's just go get it again. Let's take a look at this model because I think it should tell me in the model card how we want to batch to it. I wonder where my Onyx runtime code is. Onyx runtime whisper model. Here's a good sample. That we can look at for doing. So like for this one, I think to make it super robust, I would probably do that multiple request and set up a local Whisper endpoint that I'm running in the browser. I'm sorry, not endpoint, a local Whisper model that I imprint in the browser and then call the large deployment. And that's probably how I would set up my speech to text scenario or solution for this scenario. Why can I not find? Ooh, deploy on web. Maybe I put it in here. Yeah, I don't know where that went. But this is how you would do it for running or for implementing in JavaScript locally. We'd use Onyx runtime, and we'd use Whisper Tiny, and then we'd imprint with JavaScript. Which I cannot find the scenario or the sample for that. Although I might have written it in C# too, because you could also do server-side imprints with C#. All right, let's see. Did this deploy yet? No. That's going to take a little while. Well, I think for today, I think this is where we are going to end. So you can see when you start to look at these different solutions, you can see that we're kind of going through this. We know the use case. We're looking at that. We're kind of figuring out which models we're going to use, which services we're going to put together to fit the scenario, and then start testing those out. My next thing I really need to do is speech services and see if I can. And then also I need to get some test data. There's a lot. So when you start to break apart these scenarios and start to think about how to solve them and put them together, ends up being kind of a lot of steps, but then when you